Mailbox Sports is here and live for you. Give me a moment as we get everything together to walk on through. How's everybody doing today? As we get to celebrate something that happens once a month, obviously. Black History Month is something that I believe holds a special point of access in terms of knowledge or what have you for a given person, a culture, and an opportunity to, what's the word I'm looking for? Reintroduce. And so if we see the title there, before Jackie Robinson, hope we all have a wonderful afternoon on this Tuesday. And give me a moment as we get everything together because I want to make sure that we get to cover this stream in a way that gives us some reflection and also gives us some direction towards things of the future. Before we get into any of that, I would hope everybody is hitting that like button. If you are new to the stream, hit that subscribe button. And make sure you share this with a friend that might share with another friend as we delve into all things football, basketball, baseball, and any sport in general. But today, our delve into history focuses on stick, round ball, and not basketball when we speak about it. We talk about the Major League of Baseball, but we do it from a very historical perspective to show you that, or to pose a question. What if I told you some of the greatest baseball players to ever live never got the chance to compete on the biggest stage? Not because they weren't talented, but basically because of the color of their skin. Before Major League Baseball was integrated, before number 42 ever stepped on the Ebbets field, there was a league filled with legends, innovation, pride, and resilience. Tonight on Mailbox Sports, we're not just watching a documentary. Tonight we honor history. Tonight we honor struggle. Tonight we honor excellence that refused to be erased. This is about what I would estimate to be more than baseball. It has always been about, and it will always be about, opportunity, ownership, and community. And I think sometimes that might have happened at the cost of exclusion. Even trying to establish something that may have been greater than ourselves. We will get back to questions, comments, and concerns. Right now, we are going to press play. But before we do, if you believe sports history has a right and deserves to be told the right way, hit that like button. And if you want real conversations about sports, culture, and all things Bears, subscribe to Mailbox Sports so we can continue to build something meaningful. Go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as we get into before Jackie Robinson, the rise of the Negro League.
Original podcast.
History This Week, February 13th, 1920. I'm Sally Helm. The Paseo YMCA is no stranger to meetings. There are meetings of Midwestern missionaries, of something called the Texas Club, of the board of directors at a local hospital. The YMCA is a key institution in Kansas City, especially if you're Black. It's a place where young Black men without a place to stay can get a nice room for about $2 a week, eat in the cafeteria, play piano in the lobby. It's a place where Black kids can take swimming lessons at the indoor pool, the only one in town that Black swimmers are allowed to use. And today, more than a dozen men have come to this brick building on Paseo Street for a very important meeting. The topic of the meeting is not missionaries, Texas, or hospitals. The men are here to talk baseball.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, need to just...
Baseball at this time is the most...
Just so that we can, my apologies in advance as we watch something that is fair use from YouTube. However, we will be regaled with some AdSense revenue from the History Channel. So salute to the History Channel for providing this particular, but we will, as I stated, get caught in some AdSense revenue, so bear with us. Thank you once again. Hit that like button. Let's get back to it. Rise of the Negro Leagues.
Most popular sport in America. But Black players have been shut out of the major leagues for over 30 years. And so they have their own professional teams. The Chicago American Giants, the Detroit Stars, and the hometown Kansas City Monarchs. Black baseball players have their own teams, but they don't have their own league. And lately, a lot of people have been calling for exactly that. One prominent Black team owner wrote a big article about it this very month. He said, quote, "We produce splendid players, men of brilliant talents, many of whom could play rings around the average ball players in the white leagues if they were given the opportunity. Still, these Black teams don't see the same popularity or financial success as their white counterparts. The problem," the owner writes, "is simple. Quote, lack of organization, exclamation point. So that is why these men have come to Kansas City, to get organized. And they do. Rube Foster runs the meeting. He's the manager and owner of the renowned Chicago American Giants, and already a legendary figure in the world of ball.
Okay. First, if we can welcome in G Honda as we get into the Negro Leagues before Jackie Robinson. And as we see the Negro League coming into formation, you wonder in the Jim Crow era how the creation of independent Black teams would come about, and why we even had the Negro League was because of the exclusion of Black players. So, with that being said, let's think about this. Instead of being allowed in the established system, Blacks had to build their own because it was alleged they had no organization. So, do you think that it was more about the inability to have organization? Or was it something bigger than that? Which would have me believe, or ask the question, were the Negro Leagues created more due to being excluded from the other leagues, or more for a sense of empowerment? You know, we couldn't play with them. We wanted to still prove that we belong. So how can you prove you belong amongst people you're not playing with? Are you playing for empowerment to generate buzz, or just to be included in the game itself because you were excluded from the national scene of the game? We don't know just yet, but let's go ahead and listen some more. And G Honda, put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me clearly. Let me know if you can hear everything going on, or if I sound low to you, G Honda. Let me know. Put a 1 in the chat.
Black baseball. In some ways, he has the most to lose from forming a league because he's already doing so well on his own. But Foster is in. In fact, he's so in that he's already gotten started. he pulls out a document and presents it to the group. A charter for the new Negro National League. Foster has even picked out a motto. One thing I was wondering, the motto of the league that they announce is, "We are the ship, all else the sea."
Uh-huh.
What does that mean?
I think it meant that it was the Negro League's Declaration of Independence. They were sending a message to Major League Baseball that a new player had arrived on the scene to be reckoned with.
So the ship is the Negro Leagues? And what's the sea?
The sea is everything else that's in its way.
Today, they were the ship, all else the sea. How did Black baseball survive when segregation became the unofficial policy of the major leagues? And how did Black players, owners, and managers join together to create something that no baseball fan could ignore? A lot of times, a story about Black baseball begins with the name Jackie Robinson. But when Robinson joined the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947, he was not the first Black athlete to play in the major leagues. He was just the first in 6 decades. Before Jackie Robinson, there was Bud Fowler, who started playing professional baseball in 1877. And Fowler was far from the first Black baseball player.
Really, Sally, there's remnants or evidence of Black folks playing baseball even as enslaved people. So it certainly wasn't new that we were playing the game. We just didn't have many places to play the game from a professional standpoint.
That's Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro League's Baseball Museum. You may recognize his voice. We talked to him last year for our episode on the life of baseball superstar Henry Aaron. Bud Fowler was also a star player. You just might not have heard his name. He started out as a pitcher, and he had a great rookie season. For any baseball fans wondering, he pitched 130 innings with a 2.08 ERA. For non-baseball fans, that is very good.
Despite how talented he was and the fact that he outperformed so many of the people that he was playing with, he would always get kicked off these teams.
White players sometimes even tried to literally kick him off the field. Fowler also played second base, and players would sometimes slide right into him, try to take him out. To protect himself, Fowler invented an early version of shin guards, specially shaped pieces of wood that he'd slip into his socks. Today, you can see the modern version on the shins of every catcher from Little League on up. In general, the game looked very different back then. Pitchers threw underhand, batters could ask to have the ball pitched low or high, and Bud Fowler didn't even use a glove. He caught balls barehanded, a distinction he shared with the last Black major leaguer before Jackie Robinson, Moses Fleetwood Walker.
Moses Fleetwood Walker was a barehanded catcher. Ouch. Yeah.
Walker was a standout player in college and left school in 1883 to sign with the Toledo Blue Stockings. And in August of 1883, almost right away, white players begin a racist campaign against him. We talked about this with Phil S. Dixon, who's written several books on the history of Black baseball. He told us that summer, Walker's team was set to play an exhibition game against the Chicago White Stockings, who will eventually become known as the Cubs. The leader of the White Stockings is Cap Anson. He is the best player of his era. Many consider him baseball's first superstar.
So people are listening, and what Cap Anson says is pretty important in that particular time.
And Cap Anson says he won't play against a Black man.
When he says that he doesn't want to be on the ball field with Fleet Walker's in trouble.
Walker actually isn't even supposed to play in this game. He's suffering from a sore hand, which will happen if you're catching over 100 pitches per game without a glove. But that is not enough for Anson. He wants Walker totally out of sight. And he threatens that if he doesn't get his way, he won't play. But the manager of Walker's team, the Toledo Blue Stockings, he doubles down. He calls Anson's bluff and tells him, "I am putting Walker in the lineup. You can either play or lose the money you'd have made on ticket sales." Bob Kendrick told us.
Ultimately, he relented and played the game, but said, "We ain't gonna happen anymore." And that started that whole movement.
The whole movement against Black players in the major leagues. The reason that after Fleetwood Walker, there won't be another until Jackie Robinson.
So let's pause right there. If we can think about that, there was an actual Black player in the major leagues before Jackie Robinson. But because Cap Anson, the superstar of what would become what I cheer for as my favorite baseball team in the Chicago Cubs, he was allowed to espouse maybe what many were thinking, but to say that he would never again play against a Black player is something that hell, according to this story, is the impetus for how we got into segregated sport to begin with. So there was an actual professional player that lent himself to the major leagues before the great Jackie Robinson. Just something we should all pay homage to. Let's get back to it.
Cap Anson was saying out loud something that had been brewing behind the scenes in baseball for years.
Now, the other guys may have shared that same sentiment, not nearly as outspoken. So you need that front guy to kind of give you the courage to fall in line. But on the flip side of that, you likely had some other guys who didn't feel that way. You know, because I've always believed that great athletes want to compete against great athletes. Because the only way you can measure how good you are is by playing with and against the very best.
But ultimately, Anson's campaign to make professional baseball unwelcoming and hostile towards Black players, that carries the day. You can even see it show up in statistics from the next season in 1884, when Walker's team gets moved up to the major leagues. Phil Dixon told us one of the pitchers on Toledo that year, Tony Mullane,
He didn't like Fleet Walker being on the team, so he refused to take signals from a Black man.
Normally, the catcher signals the pitcher which pitch to throw, a fastball, a curveball. And if the pitcher ignores him, if the catcher doesn't know what's coming, it can be dangerous.
The whole year, whenever Mullane threw a curveball, and he had a pretty good one at that time, Moses Fleetwood Walker never knew when it was coming.
Mullane was quoted as saying, "I used to pitch anything I wanted without looking at his signals." And if you look at the numbers, you can see that it's true. Mullane led the league that year in wild pitches, pitches that got away from the catcher. And Walker, in turn, led the league in passed balls, pitches he was supposed to catch but didn't. You can also see the hostile atmosphere in the physical evidence from the time.
If you look at many team pictures from that period, very seldom do you see the white guys with their hand around the Black guy's shoulder or something like that, but you see them take those same positions with other white players.
2 weeks before the end of the season, Toledo cuts Moses Fleetwood Walker. It could have been because of injury, or performance, the racial pressure the team experienced throughout the year, or some combination of all of those.
So Fleet Walker was eventually disposed of, as we would assume, for pressure from the league or from those within the league predominantly. And you wonder how long this particular impact will shed its dark shadow or cast its shadow upon the ability for us to have our own leagues or be integrated into one league as opposed to having our own leagues. But nonetheless, those are the types of things that were happening throughout the rise of this. And it started with not only this being dangerous, so you're trying to injure this guy by giving pitches that are not the ones that he's signaling. Keep in mind, this guy is catching bare hand and he's being crossed up by pitches. So he's taking a physical beating, and he's getting blamed for passed balls that no doubt the same grace is not being extended to him that is being extended to the pitcher who's committing the actual wild pitch. But that is one of those instances in which you have to perform twice as good to get the same result. Let's continue to listen.
But after Walker leaves the league, no other Black player will join a major league team for more than 6 decades.
There was no written doctrine, just a verbalized agreement amongst players, managers, and owners that essentially said, if you allow a Black to play with you, you can't play with us.
It was called the Gentleman's Agreement, and it established baseball's color line.
I can turn your wildest ideas into a song. Just describe it in a few words, choose a style, and let Mareka the...
But this is not the end of Black baseball. Far from it. Black players now can't play in the major leagues. So Black teams begin to spring up around the country. And one of the people leading that charge is none other than Bud Fowler, the first Black professional baseball player, the guy who invented those wooden shin guards. He now sees that Black players need their own teams. And so he starts one. The Page Fence Giants out of Adrian, Michigan. He plays for that team and for others, the Smoky City Giants, the Kansas City Stars. These teams were traveling around the country playing games as they went. It was known as barnstorming.
They took the game on the road, and people loved it. The towns would shut down to watch these ball players play.
And it was the whole town. Black and white fans would come out to the ballpark to see these teams. Barnstorming is freewheeling, exciting, and chaotic.
It was just too haphazard. Guys jumping from team to team, and it needed structure.
Enter a pitcher named Rube Foster.
Rube Foster was light years ahead of his time. He is credited with having invented what we now know to be the screwball. Rube Foster was an absolute genius. Rube Foster, without question, is the greatest baseball mind this sport has ever seen. And most baseball fans still don't know who the heck he is.
Foster started playing baseball as a kid in Calvert, Texas, and the sport was a lifeline, literally. Dixon told us all of Foster's siblings had died from tuberculosis, and in order to avoid the same fate himself,
one of the prescriptions that doctors gave was to be outside as much as you can. And through that, Rube Foster was out and he started playing baseball.
By the time he's a teenager, Foster is playing for independent Black teams throughout Texas. And at first, he's kind of underrated.
He's the largest pitcher that anyone has ever seen. And many times he would go into town, the white fans would come out to see him, and they'd laugh. They laugh because they would think this guy's overweight, out of shape. He's not going to beat anybody. And at the end of the game, you know, he might win 1-0. And he was the last man laughing.
In fact, he's developing a reputation as the best Black pitcher in America. And he's playing on these barnstorming Black teams. He goes from Chicago to Michigan and finally joins the premier Black team of the era, the Cuban X Giants.
Man, this guy is on fire. The major leagues would come out to see him pitch, and they knew that he was in a league by himself, but they weren't about to break that color barrier no matter what it took.
After he joins the X Giants in 1902, Rube Foster makes an important move. He's still an amazing pitcher, but he also starts to get more involved with the business side of the game.
He starts to become a player advocate. Generally, he's going to be the highest paid player on the team, but he's not just satisfied with that. He wants the other guys to receive more money. So that's where he starts to fight for those guys. And then when he doesn't get enough money from one owner, he decides, hey, I'm going to jump to the Philadelphia Giants, and I'm going to take a few of these guys with me.
By 1907, at age 28, Foster has become both a player and a manager for Chicago's Leland Giants. Bob Kendrick told us he starts to encourage a distinct style of play on his team.
Fast, aggressive, daring. They bunt their way on, they steal second, they steal third, and if you weren't too smart, they were still in home.
To enforce this, Foster would actually fine his players.
As much as $5 if you were tagged out standing up. You were supposed to slide. Rube would draw a circle down the first base line and a circle down the third base line, and if every one of his players couldn't drop a bunt inside that circle, he would fine them.
The Leland Giants are good. They're playing teams around the country and around Chicago. And Phil Dixon told us, in Chicago,
Just so happens that Cap Anson had a team in the City League.
Cap Anson. One of the first superstars of baseball, the man who refused to take the field against Moses Fleetwood Walker, the man many consider responsible for the color line. He was still playing baseball in 1907. He was 55, which for a baseball player is very old. He was playing first base and also managing a local independent team called Anson's Colts. And apparently, he now had no issue playing against black ball players.
At that particular time, Cap Anson needed the Leland Giants to make money. He was
No audio. My apologies, man. I cut it so that I can get into us talking about talent and innovations. T Miles, and we talk about it only because you see these Negro League players identifying who are quantifying the star players. You see the guys that have a style of play that kind of lends itself to some speed and flair, a little bit of creativity by being fined if you're not able to lay that bunt down. And we can see how these days that cultural impact is still there when we talk about the station to station type of implementation that Rube Foster had for his team. That style of play is something that still weighs heavily in baseball when you're not able to overtake an offense with power. It totally gives credence to saying that the innovation of a Rube Foster, the Chicago factions, both pre and post him defecting and taking other players with him, is something that I think gave evidence to the growth that the Negro League game had. Not to mention, we speak about how many integrated crowds they had to watch these games and the barnstorming tours. The, what do you call it? I'm trying to think of the exact word I want to look for. The cultural impact that the barnstorming tours had. If you can see that, realize that there's not as much disdain by the consumer to see a black player as there is by the actual counterpart playing the sport in Cap Anson. And also you get to look at how later on Cap Anson, due to his own financial limitations, old age, and not being able to properly suffice to take care of himself, he was more than welcome and able, or willing, I should say, to be integrated and play against black teams after his professional playing career was over, as he managed his own team. And I find that ironic because he is really the antithesis of what we classify as the player who started the imaginary color line in baseball. But those types of things do lend themselves to show us that no matter who says they have an issue with something, when the chips are down and they have no way to substantiate or suffice for themselves, I think it just clearly indicates that the premise that they stood behind to start with was rather disingenuous and weak. At the same time, it gives the platform for these guys to continue to go out there and showcase how talented they are and continue to put themselves in the, at least in the back of the minds of the consumer when it comes to an alternative way to look at the sport of baseball and how they consume it. So with that right there, we'll get back into the rise of the Negro Leagues. My apologies for the lack of audio. T-Miles, let me know if we caught all of that. Hit that one. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that like button if you are new to the chat as of now. Thank you for coming in. Let's get back to it.
Was in financial straits.
One particular matchup on May 6th, 1909, went as follows. Here's a quote from a newspaper at the time. The Leland Giants walked all over the Anson Colts Sunday at the latter's grounds. Rube Foster doing the pitching act, and he could scarcely do enough to get warmed up, as Anson's orphans were such easy meat. The big fellow felt sorry for them and only defeated them 8-1. But satisfying as it must have been for these black players to beat Cap Anson, black baseball as a whole was starting to feel some strain.
Right now, as you watch this, your brain is being hijacked. You think.
Bud Fowler had begun organizing these teams about 20 years earlier. And by this point, the lack of a centralized structure meant that black baseball wasn't thriving as much as it could be. And teams faced economic pressures.
They needed to have a structure that essentially would mirror the success of Major League Baseball.
Rube Foster sees that.
And that is what led him down that path of working to pull those other independent black baseball team owners together.
Foster begins laying this groundwork in the 19-teens. He thinks working together in a black nationwide league is one path that might help black baseball thrive. But at the same time, Foster still believes it's also possible that the major leagues will eventually realize that the color line is absurd and give it up. After all, look at all the amazing black players on these amazing black teams. But during this same period, there are forces of racism brewing in the North that make integrating the major leagues look ever more impossible. Large numbers of Black Americans had moved to northern cities during what was known as the Great Migration. They hoped to escape the Jim Crow South But now, those same forces were turning up in the North. The Ku Klux Klan was on the rise, and in the summer of 1919, things come to a head across the country. In Chicago, the summer is brutally hot. On Sunday, July 27th, temperatures reach 96 degrees. The scorching heat sends thousands of people to the shores of Lake Michigan, including 17-year-old Eugene Williams and his friends. As the group of boys floats in the lake on their raft, they cross an invisible, informal color line in the water itself, the line separating the white and black sections of the 29th Street beach. A white beachgoer sees the raft and starts throwing rocks. Some witnesses later say they saw Williams get hit. Others say he slipped to avoid getting hit. But what we know is that Eugene Williams drowns that day in Lake Michigan. Afterwards, violence erupts across the city. It happens mainly in the city's black neighborhoods, and it leaves 38 people dead, over 500 injured, and 1,000 black families homeless after their homes burn. It's soon after the riots that Rube Foster gives up for good on the idea that integration is coming to the major leagues, and instead goes all in on the prospect of a black baseball league. Historian Robert Kuhn McGregor wrote in his book, A Calculus of Color, quote, "Though he never once referred to the summer's violence, to argue that his thinking was not affected by events would be to strain belief in coincidence beyond any reasonable breaking point." The following winter, Foster is finally ready to make this league happen. Now, he just has to convince the other independent team owners to join in with him.
Foster had to be a master salesman because the other guys were having to relinquish their independence. And that couldn't have been an easy sale.
But he calls a meeting in Kansas City and makes his pitch. By the time Rube Foster calls that meeting in Kansas City at the Paseo YMCA, he already owns one baseball team and has a partial stake in 4 more. So when it comes to giving up his autonomy as a team owner to a nationwide league,
no one had more to lose than Rube Foster.
Because he's doing great on his own. Winning games, making money. But it's also clear that black baseball as a whole will be better off if they work together. Organize, share resources. And a nationwide league won't just help baseball players or baseball fans.
In many instances, wherever you had successful black baseball, you had thriving black economies.
Foster has seen this firsthand in Chicago. His team drew black fans from the surrounding community and also white fans from outside the community, all of whom then patronized black businesses. Foster also held several community benefit games each year. The proceeds went to black civic organizations. So he comes to Kansas City already committed to a national black baseball league and all that it represents. And in fact, he's already put in a ton of work to make it happen. He's even recruited some of the country's most prominent black sports writers to help draft the league's bylaws. And at the meeting, he presents his fellow owners and managers with the charter he's already written. The corporate papers have been filed.
He was very, very convincing in what he said. He was able to get them to join into this effort. And that was kind of the birth of the Negro Leagues.
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store, preload.
The opening game is played on May 2nd, 1920. 8,000 fans turn out to see Foster's American Giants face off against the Indianapolis ABCs. Foster's team loses that game, but after a 62-game season, they emerge as the league's first champions. And the style of baseball that Foster encouraged, daring, athletic, exciting, will become signature play for the entire league for years to come. The Negro National League was an immediate success.
For the African American community, the Negro Leagues was everything. Yeah, not because it was ours. It was inherently ours. And we were proud of it and we supported it. And it was more than a sporting event. It was more than entertainment. This was a social event. Oh, you went to see and you went to be seen.
The Negro Leagues continue to to thrive through a few iterations over the next several decades, until 1947. When Jackie Robinson enters the major leagues, it is the beginning of the end for the Negro Leagues. Other star players start getting signed to the majors. Here's Phil Dixon.
When the ball players are gone, the fans follow. So now they're going to give their allegiance to a major league team, and they don't care if your team is all black.
And Bob Kendrick reminded us it was always about more than baseball.
When we lost the Negro Leagues, we lost a tremendous catalyst that sparked economic development in so many African-American communities. 18th and Vine, where the museum operates today, is no exception. The South Side of Chicago, Harlem in New York, these places where, again, typically wherever you have successful black baseball, you have thriving black economies. And so really, I'm not sure, Sally, that the African-American community realized what it was losing when we lost the Negro League. We were so excited about the possibility of integration.
It seems to me like it's like what you're talking about with the black business districts too. It kind of is an example of kind of the devil's bargain of integration in a way where it's like,
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The old adage, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. And because what we asked for was integration. What we wanted was equality. Those two are not the same. They're nowhere near the same.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Equality has been elusive. While baseball has seen many black stars since Jackie Robinson, there have only been 6 black general managers in Major League history, and no black majority team owners. Black baseball is alive, but much of that power and autonomy has been lost since the Negro Leagues faded away. And it's taken a long time for this history to be recognized. In December of 2020, Major League Baseball announced that statistics from the Negro Leagues would finally be counted with the same weight alongside Major League stats from that same era. And in December 2021, Bud Fowler, the first black professional baseball player, was finally elected to baseball's Hall of Fame. Kendrick told us,
this story is not a woe is mine kind of story. These amazing athletes never cried about the social injustice. They went out and did something about it. Again, you won't let me play with you? Okay, I'll create my own league. And when you stop to think about that, that is the American spirit at her absolute finest. So while America was trying to prevent them from sharing in the joys of her so-called national pastime, it was the American spirit that allowed them to persevere and prevail. So in essence, you make a way when there seemingly is no way.
these players, managers, owners, they became the ship. All else, the sea. Thanks for listening to History This Week. For moments throughout history that are all
What about now? What about now? What about now? You did say 2. I always forget to come back to it, T. No sound, and we talk about what the young lady just captivated the audience with, which was mentioning how 1947 was the impetus for integration into the MLB by Jackie Robinson. Several others followed suit after Jackie. Many were not able to continue to integrate the same way due to old age. Just like Cap Anson resorted to playing ball against the Negro League players because his body would not allow him to do what it once was able to do as far as Major League Baseball went. You do understand, T, that this moment right here, though monumental in a lot of ways, it changed baseball and it changed American history in a large way. But this is what I would caution anybody to think about with that change, because this is what I classify as the complicated question. The integration help black baseball, or did it, and I won't even leave it to black baseball, did it help the black community? Because we intimated last segment how it was a boon to the communities and the players and themselves, albeit modest means and not the professional glitz and glamour that some of the white athletes would have gotten at this point. Did this particular desire to be integrated ultimately dissolve the Negro Leagues and dissolve the opportunity for black wealth and black ownership? Was integration what I classify as justice? Yes, perhaps. But was it also at the same time what I classify as a loss of black autonomy? Because as we stated, we had black owners, black general managers, black players, ticket sales, grounds crew, anything you can think of was all black, or at least majority, if not all. And you think now that the integration that Malcolm so frowned upon, the integration that I think Martin at some point after it happened realized that he quote unquote led us into that burning building, you wonder, did the truth of both of these at the same time give us more hurt than help? Because again, it lessened the need for the Negro League as intimated when she said, few became the ship, many became the sea. So some washed away and never to be heard from again. The Negro League Baseball Hall of Fame is located in Cleveland, Ohio. So it is something that you can still gain insight, history, and reverence for. At the same time, you realize you respect the courage that it took for Jackie Robinson to walk into that moment. And I want you to hit the like button if you can understand that. But as T said, I think integrating was one of the worst things that may have happened for us on the whole. But penultimately, I believe that as much as the need for a person of my color is elevated in sport in terms of need and who deserves to be around, you ultimately want to know that did the need to be inclusive ultimately sever the opportunity for us to be independent in a myriad of ways. Maybe not just, from a baseball standpoint, but from it could have spawned into different neighborhoods, communities. You could have gotten other things be happening. I know these days, at least acknowledgement-wise, all of the recognitions and the acknowledgement of Negro League stats and so on and so forth, those things are now integrated into baseball numbers for comparative stats and ongoing conversations about the equity of the game. Ultimately, those things would be nice, but I'd be remiss to say that I don't wonder what if they had attempted to hold on to what was known as the Negro League and the entity in itself, to see exactly how that could have been utilized as a stepping stone or a growth tactic to continue to elevate the culture, to possibly continually have our own basketball leagues. You know, we do have a video about basketball in terms of the Harlem Wrens, the Renaissance team. We do have football clubs that were made available, the Fritz Pollards type of stories, and so on and so forth. But this baseball league was ultimately the opportunity, I think, that gave us one of the greater opportunities to formulate independence within the context of the United States and live that American dream. And so I hope that this particular live stream, documentary, and viewing can have us understand that history in itself doesn't disappear. It gets rediscovered. Keep that in mind in your own lives. The Negro Leagues were never inferior. They were excluded, and there's a difference between the two. But I think the segregation that we saw and at times still see as so negative in its objectives, while it was set to befall us in a way that was totally negative and to deem us inferior and not, deserving of utilizing equal facilities, it would have given us the opportunity, one, to have infinitely more Negro League player names to be known and revered, not just a Satchel Paige or any of the guys that just come to your mind, any initial crossover into the major leagues. But I want to know if any part of this documentary hit you hard, and if so, what part hit you the hardest? Should we know, and should more Negro League names be household names? And I think, what's a story from this era that you think every young athlete should learn? I think the best way to say it for me is that history, especially black history, isn't, in athletics, really isn't just about first, as Cash can tell you. It's about foundations. I think that this sport would have given us the foundation to be the best versions of ourselves. And before Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball, black excellence was already thriving. It just wasn't given a spotlight, or we didn't see it as such. That's one of those grass, it's not greener on the other side type of situations. Tonight wasn't about rewriting history. It was more so about restoring it and understanding the greatness that we have had as a culture when it comes to ownership, domination of a sport, the talent, the ingenuity, the resourcefulness, and the willpower to go ahead and put all those things together to make not only a successful sport, but a successful community that thrive because of a sport. And so I have great admiration for the way in which some of my YouTube contemporaries have a disdain for the way in which sport is perceived and utilized these days, which I can understand and agree that the mainstream purpose of sport is so disintegrated that it doesn't give the underprivileged youth full understanding of other options that come about for themselves. This illustration here was about giving you the opportunity to realize that we have indeed started things from the ground up. They have been thriving, and they have created legacy. And here at Mailbox Sports, I don't intend to ever create many new conversation when it comes to sport or history or the history of sport, but I do intend to have us restore those things in a way that gives us reflection, a bit more understanding of the situation itself and how it could and would have benefited us, and overall how sports still can benefit us in a myriad of ways in terms of the lessons that it teaches, the obstacles that are overcome, and the ways in which we can utilize it to benefit ourselves as a society. So with that being said, we can, even so, T Miles, we got the rest of February. Once a week we'll delve into something. This week it was baseball. We'll do a survey. We'll look into basketball, boxing, or football. With that being said, I won't hold anybody else up. It is time to enjoy the last moments of my off day by cooking up a bit of dinner for me and the wife. I have appreciated everyone's company, contributions. I hope everybody will hit that like button. If you are new, hit the subscribe button. If you have not already done so, drop comments. Also, drop a comment with a black athlete whose story deserves more recognition. Maybe that might be something that we focus on as we continue to chronicle the ways in which black excellence can be displayed and utilized, no less, when it comes to sport. I will see you guys on the next go round. Until next time, and until next delivery, Postman 1914 here, Mailbox Sports. We gone.